Jai Anilo Premadano Paramakacho
Krishna Sri Bhaktivedanta ki, Sri Mayapurna Ramani ki, Devi ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Samavira Bhaktivedanta ki, Sankirtan Yagi ki. All glories to the symbol of God. All glories to the symbol of God. All glories to the symbol of God. Lord Premanandi. Om Jnanakanandasya Janatana Sadakaya Chakshumeditambhena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Dinamutare Swayam Rupa Kadam Dadati Sapankrantikam Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 12, Text number 13. Tasya Prita Mana Raja Viprayar Domya Pripadivihi Jatakam Harayam Asa Vachayatva Cha Mangalam Tasya Pritamana Raja Tasya Pritamana Raja Viprayar Pripadivihi Jatakam Karayam Asa Vachayitva Chamangalam Tasya Prita Manaraja Viprayar Pripadivihi Jatakam Karayam Asa Vachayitva Chamangalam Tasya Prita Manaraja Vipradomya Kripadivihi Jatakam Karyam Asa Vachayitva Chamangalam
Asyaprika Maharaja Vipradomya Kripadivihi Jatakam Karyamasa Vachayitva Chamangalam Tasya Pritama Raja Vipradhamya Prabhadihi Jatakam Karyamas Vachayitva Chamangalam Tasya Pritama Raja
Tasya Pritama Maharaja Vipradomya Kripadivihi Jatakam Karyamasa Vachayitva Chamangalam
Tasya Pritama Raja
Tasya Prita Manaraja Jatakam Karayamasa Vachayitva Chamangalam Tasya Prita Manaraja Vipradomya Kripadivihi Jatakam Karyamasa Vachayitva Chamangalam Tasya Prita Manaraja Vipradomya Kripadivihi Jatakam Karyamasa Vachayitva Chamangalam
Tasya is Pritamanaha satisfied Raja King Yudhishthira Viprahi by the learned Brahmanas Dhomya Kripa Adivihi and others also. Jatakam, one of the purificatory processes performed just after the birth of a child. Karayam Asa had them performed. Vachayitva by recitation. Cha also. Mangalam auspicious. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. King Yudhishthira, who was very satisfied with the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, had the purificatory process of birth performed. Learned Brahmanas, headed by Dhomya and Kripa, recited auspicious hymns. Purport: there is a need for a good and intelligent class of Brahmanas who are expert in performing the purificatory processes prescribed in the system of Varnashrama Dharma. Unless such purificatory processes are performed, there is no possibility of good population. And in the age of Kali, the population all over the world is of Shudra quality or lower for want of this purificatory process. It is not possible, however, to revive the Vedic process of purification in this age, for want of proper facilities and good brahmins. But there is the Pancharatrika system also recommended for this age. The Pancharatrika system acts on the Shudra class of men, supposedly the population of the Kali Yuga, and it is the prescribed purificatory process suitable to the age and time. Such a purificatory process is allowed only for spiritual upliftment and not for any other purpose. Spiritual upliftment is never conditioned by higher or lower parentage. After the Garbhadana purificatory process, there are certain other samskaras, like Shimantanayana, Sadabhakshana, etc., during the period of pregnancy, and when the child is born. The first purificatory process is Jata Karma. This was performed duly by Maharaj Yudhishthira with the help of good and learned brahmanas like Homya, the royal priest, and Kripacharya, who was not only a priest, but also a great general. Both these learned and perfect priests, assisted by other good brahmanas, were employed by Maharaja Yudhishthira to perform the ceremony. Therefore, all the samskaras, purificatory processes, are not mere formalities or social functions only, but they are all for practical purposes and can be successfully performed by expert brahmanas like Homya and Kripa. Such brahmanas are not only rare, but also not available in this age, and therefore for the purpose of spiritual upliftment in this fallen age, the Goswamis prefer the purificatory processes under Pancharatrika formulas to the Vedic rites. Kripacharya is the son of the great Rishi Saradvan and was born in the family of Gautam. The birth is said to be accidental. By chance, the great Rishi Sharadvan met Janapadi, a famous society girl of heaven, and the Rishi Sharadvan discharged semen in two parts. By one part, immediately a male child, and by the other part, a female child, were born as twins. The male child was later on known as Kripa, and the female child was known as Kripi. Maharaja Shantanu, while engaged in the chase in the jungle, picked up the children and brought them up to the Brahminical status by the proper purificatory process. Kripacharya later became a great general like Dronacharya, and his sister was married to Dronacharya. Kripacharya later on took part in the battle of Kurukshetra and joined the party of Duryodhana. Kripacharya helped kill Abhimanyu, the father of Maharaj Krishna, but he was still held in esteem by the family of the Pandavas due to his being as great a Brahmana as Dronacharya. When the Pandavas were sent to the forest after being defeated in a gambling game with Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra entrusted the Pandavas to Kripacharya for guidance. After the end of the battle, Kripacharya again became a member of the royal assembly, and he was called during the birth of Maharaj Parikshit for recitation of auspicious Vedic hymns to make the ceremony successful. Maharaj Yudhishthira, while quitting the palace for his great departure to the Himalayas, entrusted Kripacharya with Maharaj Parikshit as a disciple. And he left home satisfied because of Kripacharya's taking charge of Maharaj Parikshit. The great administrators, kings, and emperors were always under the guidance of learned Brahmanas like Kripacharya, and thus were able to act properly in the discharge of political responsibilities. So this verse tells us about the importance of rituals or rites in the gradually going through the stages of life. There are important stages that everyone has to pass through, from birth to growth and maturation, and gradually dwindling and finally departing from this world. These are rites, which everyone normally goes through, passages. Rites of passage normally is referred to, that one goes through. And we see that Maharaj Parikshit, being born in a very noble family, during the time when Vedic culture was firmly in place, when he was born, he naturally went through this process of the birth ceremony. Purificatory process of birth was performed. Jata karma. So, there are many different sanskaras, many different purificatory rites. And they begin even before our birth. Garbhadana sanskar means the purification of the womb. And Srila Prabhupada recognized the importance of this ceremony. Normally, according to Vedic tradition, there is a ceremony which is performed with various mantras, fasting, and invoking the presence of the Lord, purifying the womb of the mother-to-be, and praying for a saintly child to be born as a result of the combination of the man and woman. But Prabhupada simplified this ceremony. He said that husbands and wives who want to have children in Krishna consciousness should chant a certain number of times, extra chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. We can see that Prabhupada simplified many ceremonies, knowing very well the lack of qualification of the people of the age of Kali. He simplified it. So he said, for example, that husbands and wives who want to have children, they should chant 50 rounds of Hare Krishna mantra before trying to conceive a child. The result will be the same. If anything, the result will be even better, because the Maha Mantra is all-powerful in this age. And the point being made here is that there's a connection with each of the rites of passage that we have to go through and our spiritual advancement. They're not disconnected. We are not talking about material engagements. We don't see life within this world as a passage through material stages, although it appears that way. Birth, growth, maturing, marrying, having children, and gradually getting older, and dwindling of the body, and gradually death. These appear to be changes to the physical body. But the fact is that they affect change also on the consciousness. And each one of these different stages of life is important for our spiritual advancement. Just like we can appreciate that birth is very important, conception is very important. Of course, we are what we are. But our parents, at least, should want to have born in their family an advanced child. Because the father, the mother have to pass on so much knowledge to the child. They have to put in so much effort in raising a child. So how much more meaningful it will be if the child is receptive to being spiritually trained. I mean, this takes into account the idea that the parents are interested in spiritual life. If they are, then certainly they should want to have spiritually advanced children. So it is not a question of chance which child was born to which parents. It has nothing to do with chance. Chance, Prabhupada says, simply means that one does not understand. So we call what we don't know chance. But actually there is a science of understanding exactly how to attract an advanced soul into the combination of the sperm and the egg. And it is done by consciousness. Just as we see here, our association is determined by our consciousness. Because we are all together interested in Krishna consciousness, we socialize together. We form an assembly of devotees. So, like attracts like in one sense, although they say opposites attract. But here it is a question of birds of a feather flock together. Persons of similar mentality or interest form societies. And Prabhupada makes this point in the Nectar Construction, that we see in business that people form chambers of commerce. In sports, they form clubs. In philosophy and academia, they also form academies. So that people of similar, or ladies who like to quilt, right? They have quilting, quilting guilds. So this is quite common. So in the same way, the point made here is that consciousness of a certain nature on the part of the father and mother will provide the shelter for a soul of a similar conscious nature to take birth within that family. And therefore we see that Maharaj Richard is born to very exalted father and mother, Uttara, mother, and Abhimanyu, his father, great personalities. And they have a great child, not by chance. So, all along the way, there are important rites or rituals to mark the auspicious time, the occasion, so that one can pass from one stage to the next stage. Just like if you want to go to any, let's say you want to go from one place, let's say you want to enter into a sports stadium. You have to pass through a turnstile, you have to buy a ticket, you have to pay, you have to do various things. If you want to go on a bridge, you have to pay to get onto that bridge. If you want to get educated, you usually have to pay something to get educated. And then there's a certain thing that happens at the time of graduation. In other words, every stage that you go through, from one stage to the next, there's something to mark it. And if you don't fulfill that thing, you don't really go to the next stage. Now, there's a great problem in today's society, which is that there are practically no rights or real rights performed. This is a society that we live in that has no rights. What is the birthright? Well, there is, a baby, what do they call baby shower? Well, that is, in a sense, this baby shower is a marking of the birth. Right? It is a marking. And we have something called birthday parties, when we celebrate a child's birthday. But really, there was far more ceremony and ritual in past times, because these events were considered extremely important. And they weren't just the birth event. Now, for example, how do we tell if someone comes of age? Just like amongst the Jews, they used to do this thing, bar mitzvah. The boys would be, and in Christianity also they have certain ceremonies, where a boy or girl is at a certain age. But what is the issue in these Jewish or Christian ceremonies? Where one makes a commitment to God. Actually, they mark the point where one is old enough to make a commitment to God. And a similar type of ceremony is there in our own Vedic tradition, which we call initiation. It is a commitment to God, that I make a vow. This is the purpose of vrat, is to make a vow that I promise that henceforward I will do such and such thing. But where is such initiation generally in society today? Srila Prabhupada once said to me that even 100 years ago, at the time, say about 100 years ago, he said nobody in India would be without an initiation. Everyone in society, Prabhupada said, even the prostitutes had a guru, were initiated. Somehow or other, every single person had gone through some type of rite of initiation. Because no one was living who could think that I could live without some relationship with God. But in today's world, God has been removed from the formula. So people don't think in terms of initiation and making a vow of dedicating oneself to serving God. So when we try to consider how does someone come of age now, what is the sign of someone's coming of age? Well, maybe they're given an allowance by their parents. Or maybe they're allowed to, go shopping. Or clean the house, or mow the lawn. Right? Or, eventually drive a car. Or do the laundry. I mean, these may seem very ordinary, and they are very ordinary. But that's the problem. That coming of age today has been reduced to such ordinary formulas that there's no religious content anymore. There's no spiritual content. There's no spiritual connection, per se. Because we're living in a very secular society, a very mundane world. So, what we see here and how we apply it in our own life is very important. Here we see Maharaj Parikshit had a birth ceremony. And this means that we have to introduce various important ceremonies. Prabhupada said that we cannot follow all of the principles of all of the practices of Varnashrama Dharma, but we can do the Pancharatriki system, which has been introduced by Narada Muni and Srila Sanatana Goswami, Bhaktivedanta Goswami. They have written in great length and detail different ceremonies which the Vaishnavas should follow. And Srila Prabhupada wanted these introduced. So, if we do that, we see that the living in a community like this, which I say is just like a village, right? It is like a village. With this many persons living here, with this many, each person, let us say, has to go through maybe 10, 15 ceremonies, and if there's 100 persons, that's 1,000 ceremonies. So, at least in a single year, with all the people here, there will be 5, 6, 7, 10 opportunities for celebrating. And usually these celebrations are done as a festival. They involve some festive occasion. They involve the devotees coming together. Just like now, for lack of any better thing, we have to have our, what does it say on the April Fool? Everybody becomes a fool. Sponsored by our, revered schoolmaster and his wife. He says, sponsored by everyone who is welcome to become a fool. So, which is not bad, because not that is good, but at least we know that by coming there, there will be some Krishna conscious activities. But the point I'm making is that we have to utilize these foolish festival occasions of material society only because we don't, we don't utilize our own culture, Vaishnava culture. Therefore, we have to depend upon these others. So, if we become a little learned, then we may find that there's something near April 1st that we can celebrate, so that we don't have to use these mundane occasions to come together. Prabhupada makes the point that why is there now the use of Pancha Ratrika system rather than Varnashrama Dharma system? Because in this age people are Shudra. They are Shudra, Kalo Shudra Shambha. That in Kali Yuga people are fallen. They are of a lower standard. Brahminical society is very difficult to come by. Just like we had our, wedding ceremony recently, and someone said to me that it's lucky this is a Kali Yuga. Because if someone had been there, like they do in Tirupati, they have, when they do yagnas, I remember it was raining. It wasn't that rainy, it was a long drought in India. So all of the state of Andhra, which is central India, near Hyderabad, and Hyderabad is part of the state of Andhra, was concerned how to bring rain. So they arranged for many Brahmins in Tirupati to do the ceremony which would invoke, rain, induce Indra to bring rain. And they got the most qualified Brahmins, and of course they have some Brahmins whose only purpose is checking to see that the mantras are pronounced properly. But to make a long story short, they could not get any Brahmins to properly pronounce the mantras. And as a result, there was no rain. They could not find suitable Brahmins because for some reason it was a very complex system of chanting, and they could not do it. So then Srila Prabhupada came with his international lectures and yamanas. There was International Society of Krishna Consciousness of renovated lectures and yamanas who are now Brahmanas. And they performed the only possible yajna in this age, which was Harinam Sankirtan. And on the day we did the Harinam Sankirtan, through the streets of Hyderabad, even going into the Muslim areas, it poured rain. Which was not lost upon the people of Hyderabad. The newspapers all ran front page stories at this point. And they made very clear the point that what could not be done by the Brahmins of Tirupati was done by these Western, Vaishnavas, international Vaishnavas. Why? Not certainly due to any credit on our part, but due to the potency of the Maha Mantra, which is the only effective yajna for this age of Kali. So we saw practically proof of this. And here, Prabhupada is making the point, and as I said the other day, if someone had been checking, if we had appointed someone to check the rituals as they were performed at the wedding ceremony, that we might still be sitting here today. The happily married couple might still be waiting to get married. Because there were so many discrepancies, which is natural in this age. That is bound to happen. So, whoever made that comment said it's lucky it's Kali Yuga. It's why? Because these things are less important. And Prabhupada said that as soon as the Maha Mantra is there, it is a complete ceremony. And that is why when Srila Prabhupada installed the Krishna Balaram deities in Vrindavan, he asked the Brahmins of Vrindavan to do the yajna. But he made the devotees of ISKCON do kirtan. And he insisted, he told us separately, he said, make sure that you continue to do kirtan through the whole ceremony. And Prabhupada told us afterwards that the actual installation and the powerful effect was by the kirtan. that has the most effect in the Kali Yuga. Harinama, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kaluva Nasteva, 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 Katira. Kali Yuga, the method is through chanting, and there is no other way. And we see practically that our lives have become transformed through the process of chanting. Persons who are addicted to all kinds of sinful habits are able to give up these habits because of gaining strength through the chanting process. So, persons may not necessarily at first appreciate the value of chanting, and they don't. Actually, they don't. But there is great, great power in the chanting. We see that, for example, there's religion, see, and there's a transcendental religion. Religion keeps us in place. Religion keeps society from becoming animals. That's why there are so many rituals. That's why there's temple worship. At least human society avoids degrading to the level of animals. But how to break free and get liberation from birth and death requires a much more powerful thing than mere, I'm using the word religion here to mean simply ordinary dharma. Sanatana Dharma is something different. Eternal religion is something different than ordinary rituals of this world. Rituals are important. And the process that we follow is that the ordinary religion is connected to the eternal religion. So that marriage, for example, is an ordinary religious affair. It is religious. It is religious, but it is not necessarily liberating. But if the marriage is done according to Vaishnava ceremony, if the ingredient of Vishnu and Vishnu Bhakti is added into the ceremony, then the marriage becomes transcendental. And in every aspect of all of our rituals, if the connection is made with Vishnu through Bhakti, it becomes transcendental. So this is our system. And it is not a very difficult thing. It is not very difficult, and it is very encouraging to add Krishna into each aspect of our life. And it is important. Just like if we don't do this, then we will mark these stages of life in a mundane way. In a very mundane way. And it is unfortunate. It is very unfortunate that this type of ceremony or ritual or rite has been taken out of life. And so you see that what is the major problem people face in the world today? They have a huge identity crisis. They don't know how to fit into society. They don't know how to, men don't know how to be men. Women don't know how to be women. Children don't know how to be children. Parents don't know how to be parents. Old people don't know how to be old people. Because there's no rites of passage. There's no marking of this is how it is. This is how you become a man. This is how you become a woman. There's no such instruction. Maybe you can say there, but what is the instruction? The main instructor is television. I heard one statistic that a child, by the time they reach, finish school, will have sat in front of a television. I think the figure was something like 12,000 times longer than in front of his own father and mother. Some ridiculous figure. In other words, who's taking over the teaching? Traditionally, there were elders, patriarchs, elderly persons, patronly or matronly persons who were able to instruct by their example. What is example now? When I see sometimes I see people walking in front, this neighborhood is like a great classroom. What life should not be like. And actually, it's very appropriate, just like you see on the outside of temples in South India, right? They have all these statues of what the material world is like. And then inside, You Muslims today have so many statues of very materialistic activities going on in many of the temples in South India. Men and women, copulate, and so many things. And the whole point is that is the external world. And then inside, I don't need to say all the statues if you wonder what I'm saying, but there are many temples like this. And then inside is the temple where the deity lives. And you're supposed to sense that you're going from the material world into the spiritual world. Well, we don't have to put any of those statues outside because we have the walking statues where people walk around this neighborhood. And sometimes I see elderly people, and it's outrageous. The activities, the way they're dressed, their consciousness, their activities are completely bewildering. They have no sense of what the value of age is. And we discussed this last time. What is the best age of life? What age does our society place the most emphasis on? Someone said, childhood, but we concluded that it was probably 20 to 30 years old was considered, the focus. The heroes of today are 20 and 30 years old. TV personalities, movie personalities, sports heroes, basically. And the rest are, there's some scientist or something like that. They're not really, you don't consider a scientist generally a hero. So it's mostly heroes are 20, but 20 to 30 years of age, people are still struggling to figure out what life is all about. So if those are the persons who are heroes, and they don't actually understand what the purpose of life is, what does it say about society? It says that the values are completely, at this point, wrong. And that is the problem that of the world we live in. So we have to introduce a structure into our own community. We are doing it, Srila Prabhupada has done, where children know what it means to be children, parents know what it means to be parents, a boy knows how to grow into a man, a girl knows how to grow into a woman, people know how to grow old. In other words, each stage of life has its own dignity, has its own value system, which is instructive to the person, so that they can actually pass from one stage of life into the next, until finally they come to the point, of the final stage, which is when you have to leave this body. If you don't get born properly, if you don't grow old properly, how are you going to die properly? And if you don't die properly, then what does it say about your next birth? Then you again start the whole process over without having made any advancement. No progress. So, this is the reason why this verse is given here to tell us that King Parikshit did go through a birth ceremony. There was a specific ceremony. And what was the purpose of the ceremony? To invoke auspiciousness. We see who was present. Domya, Kripa. And it's very interesting that the person who helped to kill the father of the child is present, blessing. Can you imagine people in this community get into little squabbles, and they practically will kill each other if thoughts could kill. Prabhupada once made a comment that, when one person, I won't repeat the comment, but it was a very unpleasant comment, making the point, he made a point that, when someone dislikes another person, they won't do anything if they think it'll help that other person will be helped. Even if they, even if it's an insignificant act, they wouldn't do it if they think it will benefit one of their enemies. So here is the enemy. The enemy, Parikshit Maharaj should be his number one enemy. He killed his father. Parikshit Maharaj never got to see his father. This person, Kripa, was one of the persons who killed his father. And he's one of the persons who's there at the birth ceremony. I think it's quite remarkable, isn't it? You think that you could be so advanced and broad-minded to invite a person who was responsible for killing a family member as dear to you as your own father or mother would be? They did so. how much they held, Brahminical culture in respect. To be able to do so, it's remarkable. Actually, it's remarkable. It's actually inconceivable. It shows totally how much these persons were human beings and not animals. How elevated they were. And we should consider this point because we allow our petty arguments and misunderstandings and likes and dislikes to cause so much friction, so much unpleasant dealings. And here is a case of practically, it was absolutely against all proper codes in which Abhimanyu was killed. It was not killed fairly. Actually, they did not act as Brahmins. They didn't act as Kshatriyas or Brahmins or anything. They acted improperly. But still, because this person was in all respects, overall a Brahmin, they treated him as a Brahmin. And he was actually their well-wisher. That's the next point, that these persons acted out of duty, not out of hatred. So the whole battle, that went on in Kurukshetra, it was in its own way not an ordinary battle. They were angry. They wanted to kill each other. But at the same time, we find out that in the evening time, after the fighting would stop, what would they do? They would all come together and eat together. Again, it's inconceivable. People in this community, I say this community because I consider this community better than most other communities, if not all of the communities. But even in this community, if someone gets on the wrong side of someone, they won't talk to them. For how long? It can go on for years. And yet here they are, fighting with each other, trying to kill each other, and at night they share the same food. Again, what does this say about how we should be dealing with each other? Not that we should be fighting all day to kill each other, but we should at least learn from this example, that there must have been a very special consciousness that these persons had. Now, when we together are all simultaneously trying to spread Krishna consciousness together and be Krishna conscious together, we have every reason to always be favorably disposed towards each other, to always share with each other, and to never incur any kind of, never hold within the heart any kind of malice towards each other. So it's very significant that they could invite each other. They invited people. So, Kripacharya was the teacher of the Pandavas. It mentions here that when the Pandavas were sent to the forest after being defeated in the gambling game of Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra entrusted the Pandavas to Kripacharya for guidance. And after the end of the battle, he again became a member of the Royal Assembly and was called during the birth. And when Maharaj Yudhisthira renounced and retired from life and went to the Himalayas, he entrusted Kripacharya with Maharaj Krishna as his disciple. It's pretty remarkable. That is remarkable. That's the whole thing is astonishing. Yudhisthira means Arjuna also. So here's a person who kills Arjuna's son. And kills his son. On top of that, he's the father. He's the killer of the boy's father, and yet he becomes a spiritualist. What does that tell you about the culture and society? It is very, 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 it is inconceivable. That's what it is. It's simply inconceivable. We are still living out cowboy culture. Like two people drawing their guns, right? Marking off, carrying them, walking up, spinning around, shooting. Why? Because you looked at me the wrong way. You did, you harmed me by looking at me the wrong way. You said an unkind word. And you draw their guns and shoot. And we're doing it on a massive scale now. Instead of, 6 shooters, it's with, missiles. So, people do not know, anything. This business of, international, disputes over land, etc. Prabhupada said it's ridiculous. It's like thieves argue over stolen property, or like dogs barking over a stolen loaf of bread. This is my land. This is our turf. This is our nation. You have no right to cross here. You have no right to tell us how we should govern our nation, on and on. And yet, what do they do? My. What is that my? It is, who is the proprietor? They don't even know who the proprietor is. And they're just fighting. So we're all doing that on larger or smaller scales. We're fighting for what we have misappropriated as our own. We have taken, something which is not ours to be ours, which begins with this body. This body, we say, is ours, but it's not. How can it be yours? Did you have to pay for it? What did you do with it? How did you do anything to claim it as your own? It is not yours. Nothing within this world. You cannot, it is made of energy, and the energy doesn't belong to you. So even this body is given to you. Your name is given to you. The food you eat, the air you breathe, the water you drink, everything is given to you. So how can you claim it as your own? It's just been given to you, loaned to you. But who is the actual proprietor? Most people have no idea. No idea. And even those who have an idea do not use these things in the service of that proprietor. So we have so much work to do, but if we don't first of all do the work on ourselves, if we don't have the answers straight for ourselves, if we don't live our life according to our philosophy, who are we going to teach? Who's going to become convinced? First of all, you have to make yourself an example. Otherwise, you can't teach. People will not listen and respect someone who says one thing and does another. That's called hypocrisy. To teach by example. And this is more important. In education, this is most important. Not simply book knowledge, but formation of character. That is real education. To form a person's character is real education, not simply to, cram some information into their brain. We have to see if we're succeeding in our own education and others' education by whether the character is remolded. It requires molding, remodeling. And the standard here, the standard was shown by Srila Prabhupada. Each one of us, to whatever degree we're able to, is trying to show a standard. We should improve and lift that standard higher, higher and higher. Then Krishna consciousness will spread. Prabhupada pointed out, when one reporter came and talked with him in Australia, how it is that the people are changing. He said they're associated with me. And by associating with me, they're learning how to do everything. So this is our process of preaching, association. International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This is the purpose which this movement is formed. To give association to others. We should not be selfish. We should preach. Preach means to take some inconvenience, to mix with the non-devotees, to give them your association. You don't give them your association, then how will the world change? That means to take some inconvenience, go out in whatever way you can, and mix with the public and transform them through your association. So we'll stop here. Does anyone have any comments?
I just want to share with you power of prayer, Sri Gurudev. I was about 3 years old, and during the month of summer, I used to get in the back those little things on holy. I used to tell my mother, please scratch it, please rub it. And she used to do it, and sometimes it was getting the light and I wake her up and say, please scratch it, please scratch it. So one night she said, why don't you pray to God, pray to Bhagavan, let's make it rain. And I said, okay, God, make it rain. And it rained. The power of prayer.
And ever since then, you have believed in God. What was it that was hitching you?
It's a little thing which comes in the back for the body because of heat, excess heat.
Oh,
Teacher. Teacher.
yes. There's another thing also I remember. There's also some caterpillar that comes and puts its hair in. Have you ever had that?
No.
Oh. I also had that. I thought you meant that. I had one once. I had that. Some caterpillar was crawling there. The fuzz and the caterpillar, like little hairs that goes inside the skin. It's so itchy. It happens in the rainy season. It's very hot in hot and rain. You can't very hard to get it out. It just gradually has to come out. Thousands of little. Any questions? Yes.
So really, you're saying how we should keep all our differences aside and work together to preach the mission of Lord Chaitanya. What would Prabhupada recommend the best way to resolve our differences?
Prabhupada said the best way to resolve differences is if everyone can perform a common activity. And there was such differences, he told us, all of you go out on Sankirtan. At that time, we were doing only Harinam. But he said, if everyone goes out together in the Harinam party, then because of the common activity, you'll all be brought together, and all differences will be dispelled. He said, perform a common activity. You see, we don't have so many common activities, especially because we have mainly a household community. Every household is its own little temple or kingdom. So there's not so much opportunity for mixing. But if we can, of course, this is one opportunity, temple, kirtan, artis, harinam parties, some preaching festivals, or as you see here was opportunity. This Jatakarma birth ceremony, the whole village must have come. That's why I said it's so that with the April Fools party, everybody can come together. That's a common activity. That will overcome differences. Therefore, it's good. Don't think that I don't appreciate this. I do appreciate it. I was only trying to make the point earlier that since we don't have so many other occasions, we borrow, from the materials we borrow and all of it. But actually, the idea is very good for coming together. That's what we're going to do. Any other? Yes,
Shilagiri, in the purport, Prabhupada describes about the conception of Kripacharya, the heavenly society growing. We see in the Vedic literature many instances of great personalities seemingly conceived by accident, as opposed to God. Is this a special arrangement of the Lord? How do we understand?
It's a special. And these are not ordinary persons. In other words, these persons are either eternal associates of the Lord or great demigods or demigoddesses, and they want to find some opportunity for coming in this world. So they take any advantage of any opportunity. This is not, in other words, don't think that, two people having sex in the back of a car seat, are normally going to produce a great child. We should not transpose this into modern day society and think, well, see, this happens, so therefore. If you don't do things in the right way, don't expect the right result. Demigods are not under the laws of humans. That's the point. Great personalities do not have to follow the rules of ordinary mortals. So ordinarily, the consciousness of the child, anyway, look at who the parents were. This was not some ordinary person. Rishi Sharadwa met Janapati. Both father and mother had a qualified. Maybe they didn't have sex in the proper way. But again, amongst this society women, this is not improper. There are different rules to be followed in different societies. And this is not human society. That this person is not a human, is not born. Kripacharya's birth, which is described here, he's not an ordinary human. Because his birth is not human. Born, his mother is a heavenly woman. Nor is the Rishi an ordinary person. They're both qualified. Father and mother are qualified. Yes, sir.
Just the fact that they're mentioned in Bhagavatam, out of billions and billions of living entities that have taken the birth since then, very few are mentioned in Bhagavatam.
They got born immediately. They were immediately. It says as soon as they were conceived, they took birth. That's how it is in heavens. Heavenly immediately. As soon as the birth happens, as soon as conception, immediately birth. No pregnancy. Pregnancy is one of the curses on human society. The woman has to undergo pregnancy and suffer for so long. Whereas in the heavenly planets, immediately birth. You conceive and birth. You don't have to wait in anxiety to figure out to see what it's going to turn out like. You know it right away. Yes, Nandini?
So good. All of us sitting here in this room, or even the devotees all over the world perhaps, have not been conceived through these purificatory processes.
Yes, we were conceived by a very important process of initiation. Our real birth was not the birth of this body, it was the spiritual birth. And by that spiritual birth, it wipes out the ill effects of the previous birth.
So that if all of us, aspiring devotees, who certainly, have normal births and normal parents, seekers, that low birth, were able to hear about Krishna consciousness, somehow come in contact with spiritual master, begin the process of spiritual life. That includes the entire planet. So they be able to do that.
Yeah, anybody is able to do that, but let us understand that our, Prabhupada makes the point, and Krishna makes it in the 7th chapter, that you don't start the process of devotional service in this lifetime. There is a past which is unseen. So you may say that, the devotees of this time were just like anybody else, but they weren't just like anybody else. They were not. Prabhupada even went as far as to say where Chaitanya placed his devotees in different parts of the world to spread the Sankirtan movement. I don't think it's correct to say that those who become devotees are ordinary. They're not ordinary. They have already done, according to Scripture, so much piety and bhakti in previous lives to come to this point. Otherwise, they cannot do it. That's why others can't do it, and why devotees can't, because they're not ordinary. And Krishna may have used some father and mother to bring into this world a child. The father and mother will get benefited also, even if they were very ordinary. The father and mother of devotees are also not ordinary. Because look at how much benefit the father and mother are going to derive by having a child who's a devotee. So even though you may look at your father and mother and think that they're just ordinary material father and mother, they're not. Because they had you as their child. Now you can all start to look at your moms and dads and new you start to see halo. You say, Mom, you're really egocentric with us. All right, let us end here. Srimad Bhagavatam. Try to see Bhakti.